Hello everyone. If you are tired of typical stories about athletes and want something unusual about a little-known character, this issue is for you. Unrealistic strength indicators, power, gangs, 2 prison sentences, cocaine, cruel twists of fate, and much more. Not a bad set for one story, right? And all this is about the bright, but little-known U.S. bodybuilder of the 80s, Craig Monson, who was remembered not for cups and awards, but for his fantastic strength and reputation as a gangster. This is really one of the most difficult and interesting destinies. To be honest, Craig's story reminds me of the fate of BERTIL, a killer bodybuilder whom I told you about earlier, but he finished very badly. I will not spoiler. If anyone has not watched this issue yet, then the link will be in the description. Be sure to look, because that issue really gathered a lot of positive feedback, and I am grateful for your feedback on it. Well, as for Craig, just watch this issue to the end and then be sure to comment. Your opinion is important to me. Monson grew up in Los Angeles on the east side of South Central. From the age of 13, he was a fan of iron, collected magazines, redrawn them, studied at school with a sports bias, but even as for peers, he disappeared on playgrounds and in halls so much that teachers called parents to school. But Craig was incorrigible. Already at the age of 14, he cut the sleeves on t-shirts because they were too tight in the biceps. And of course, in high school, his arms were already 48 centimeters in circumference. He himself organized a training ground in the backyard, kneaded concrete himself, attracted a welder friend, and gradually they figured out primitive simulators together. Monson's energy output was not only in training. Already at the age of 16, he became one of the leaders of the Avenue Gang, which subsequently caused a stir throughout the area. And in parallel, he began performing at local urban bodybuilding tournaments in Los Angeles. A few years later, when he was still very young, he ended up in the California State Prison in Tracy. Craig continued to train there, served time, came out. It would seem that it was possible to continue training, but one day Monson caught a robber red-handed who broke into his mother's house. That thief, as it turned out, had already been imprisoned for theft and had just been released, taking up his old ways again. He went to work with a hammer in case of resistance. But he clearly did not expect to meet Craig there. A fight broke out. Monson also got hurt, but in the end he took away the hammer and the robber beat him with it. Self-defense, protection of property, unfortunate circumstances, manslaughter in the heat of battle. Monson brought all sorts of arguments in his defense. But the court still accused him of not premeditated murder. This was Craig's second stint, this time in St. Quentin prison. Years later, Monson recalled that after the second term he was sure that even amateur bodybuilding would have to say goodbye. And he also talked about how he loved working out at the Pit Outdoor Gym, a hardcore place a quarter-mile from Muscle Beach. He and a friend first went there at the age of 16. It was 66, and they were not allowed even for money simply because of the color of their skin. But the guys were from the gang, arrogant, young. They climbed over the fence and trained anyway, and this happened every time, until they were finally allowed to train on an equal basis with everyone else. Moreover, passers-by stopped every now and then to watch Monson train. He was impressive not only in appearance, but also in strength. Bench press 265 kilograms for 5 reps is no joke. After that, there were dumbbells of 90 kilos and, of course, the signature French bench press. When Craig during the exercise wound the neck far behind his head or even put it on the bench behind him in each repetition in order to work without cheating. Sometimes just a crowd of enthusiastic onlookers gathered around, and one of the athletes, who introduced himself as Paco Archie from Spain, suggested that Monson return to bodybuilding and perform as an amateur at the Mr. World competition. He also advised Craig on supplements and medications, for which Monson turned to doctors for prescription. The following is a quote from Monson. "People often talk to me about steroids. Look, when they put me in jail in San Quentin, I had arms that were 56 centimeters long. And years later, my hands remained the same. Well, except that they became 54 and a half, sort of. I had never seen steroids before I was 30 years old. Who says you can't pump up your arms 56 centimeters without steroids? It's all crap. I even managed to perform at local tournaments before my prison term, and they told me backstage that it was unrealistic to look like this without steroids. They didn't believe me, but I just took after my parents. I had really good data from nature. After that, they fed me methane in the gym. They said it was just vitamins, but my strength was just popped. But that guy, he worked as an administrator and then wondered why his pills worked so well on me, but not on him. That was the first time I tried drugs. And then, yes, of course, I used it. What should I hide? The big guy took, of course, more doses than the doctors prescribed for him in the prescription. Of course, this is still bodybuilding with serious goals. And began to grow rapidly. Monson had never been outside America before. Why? I haven't traveled out of state. And then I got ready and flew to Europe, to Switzerland for major competitions. On stage, Monson then weighed 123 kilograms. 20 kilograms heavier than his closest competitor. He passed the finals and immediately became a favorite of the crowd, which eventually booed the decision of the judges, who put Craig only fifth. He was obviously sued. The audience raged so much that the judges eventually conceded and named Monson, at least, the people's champion of the tournament. But no more. And in the end, friends, this is a funny moment. Now I'm looking at Monson's biography again, and Craig really got a prize for audience recognition and attention, a box of chocolates for 5th place. I would never have believed it, but this is a fact that is written in Monson's biography. Amazingly. But he made money selling autographed photos to the audience. A huge queue lined up for him, which lasted until the moment when the organizers turned off the lights in the hall. Nevertheless, Monson was remembered and soon invited to a tournament in London. And there Craig made a splash again. He got a standing ovation with his posing and not even shouting, but growling from the stage. And after that, he was advised to smile more quickly in order to become even more popular with the public. Still, the main thing that distinguished Monson was his power. During a hard workout, he could first shake 180 kilograms lying down for 25 repetitions and several sets, and so reach 225 kilograms, and then switch to dumbbells under 90 kilograms each. Craig's records also include 142 kilograms in the French bench press, in the style I have already described. When training partners had to literally hold Monson by the legs so that he would not be outweighed by the barbell in his hands, as well as 600 kilograms of leg press, in the mid-80s. Monson's business took off. He became a star, began driving around in a limousine with a personal driver, hanging out at elite parties, and so on. And in general, he got hooked on drugs. In 6 years, Craig lost his form, stopped performing, even showing his form at guest poses, and learned not all the charms, but all the negativity from being addicted to drugs, and actually fell into a deep depression. Later, Monson realized that he would not get out of this pit himself and turned to a clinic to help drug addicts. It was only after a few years that he was able to return to normal life. It was only in '96, when Craig was 46 years old, that he was able to resume training in the gym. It is clear that by that time he had already lost his shape and there was no trace of the previous volumes. Nevertheless, he began training in recovery. Soon he was pressing 145 kilograms 50 times lying down and could do so several approaches. Monson regained his form in the early '90s. For this it took several years. At the end of 2016, Craig was hospitalized. Doctors removed his gallbladder, which led to rapid weight loss. But these days, Monson still lives an active life, continues light workouts, and is also writing a book about his life. Plus, he has a small line of clothes for fans. Monson was repeatedly respected by actor Danny Trejo, and C.T. Fletcher recalled that during his powerlifting performances, when he was a damn big guy, they still called him Mini Craig Monson. And at first, C.T. was really offended and outraged, but after personally meeting Craig, he realized that he was really huge. That his hands were so big that C.T.'s hand was literally lost in them during a handshake. And this is not surprising, because Monson's height is 188 centimeters. This is the story of the various twists and turns that took place in the fate of Craig Monson, again, as always. The most important thing for me is feedback from you, and there is definitely something to discuss here, because this bodybuilder has his own joints and a situation when he was frankly unlucky. 2 prison sentences, uniform, power. If you liked this video, please like and subscribe to the channel. But in any case, regardless of everything as always, thank you for watching. Sports Guru was with you. See you later.